Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to Character and Values Education. This is our 7th week, and today I'm going to focus on why we need values education in secondary education. So this has become an important topic in Turkey, and the Turkish National Ministry of Education has went through a very detailed program development, and the minister tried to put all different kinds of values in different courses in different levels in K-12 education. So there should be a need for this, and perhaps because of this need, which is perceived by the state but not by the individuals in the society, has made the education a value-based education. And the education of values not only are embedded in the curriculum of the courses, but it is also expected that the hidden curriculum would help to have a meaningful values education. So today we will analyze possible reasons for why we need values education in Turkey. So let's get started with the basics. We'll base on our discussion on Erkılıç chapter. So I hope you have read it so far. What are the basic arguments of our authors this week? The basic arguments are that there is a continual change in institutions of the society. So change, societal change, culture change, this takes place every time, every place, in every culture, not only in Turkey. So there takes place wars, there takes place revolutions, there takes place pandemics, as we are experiencing right at the moment, and such kind of large-scale changes in the environment and large-scale changes in the world conditions creates changes in individual societies. So this change is deliberate, according to the author. He believes that this change all around the world, including our nation, has purposes. So somebody has designed this. It's taking place because after industrialization, the market economy, and liberalization and globalization, there should have been a certain type of individual to feed the needs of the market economy. It's deliberate, but this change is mostly unplanned. Okay, so nobody took this pains to design the market or design the society in a certain way so that people would have a smooth transition. No, it's mostly unplanned. So this change takes place in education as an important institution in the society. It takes place in the culture of nations, including the world culture. It takes place in religious life, the philosophical domain. Change takes place in economical, political, and judicial domain. And media and information technologies especially have changed a lot so far, especially in the last, let me say, perhaps 30 years, okay? And in Turkey, it's the last 30 years, by the way, 30 or 35 years. And the structure of family have also gone considerable change all around the world. So these changes demand something. They demand that the individuals living in different societies and cultures need to adapt to new circumstances surrounding them, and they have to reconsider the values of past generations. Once the change has taken place and established so far, then there appeared a so-called generation gap, okay, between the young members and the old members of the societies. This generation gap is partly useful because if new generations aren't that different than the old generations, we can't expect advancement in science and technology or in other domains of human civilization. But things didn't go that well in different parts of the society, and there has been considerable clash and problems between groups and individuals in each and every society. These problems also can create further problems for governance of the state. Okay, so if there is a problem of increasing divorce in every society, as we all know, including the United States and Turkey. So the divorce rate all around the world is increasing year by year. So is this a problem? Yes, it's a problem. Why is that a problem? First, when people get divorced, for instance, children have to live in separated households. Okay, and considering the labor market conditions for women and inequality for wages and opportunities for jobs, just imagine how divorce might negatively influence the economy as a structure, how it might negatively influence the women because sometimes they might not find jobs to live their own lives, to earn their own lives, and so on. So if there is one problem, this problem is spread to all the institutions of the society. It's not only an individual's problem. So these kind of changes, this is just one example that I can readily bring to your attention. So when such kinds of problems, wars, violence, economic problems, and changes in religious life, changes in culture, family, all these add up to a let's say uncertainty for each and every individual, and an uncertain situation also for the society's survival. Okay, it's not only the individuals who survive, it's also the societies that survive, and societies can survive to the extent that they can transmit their values to the next generations to an extent that it enables the conservation of the old ways, but also it enables the an openness to the new ways so that the advancement can take place. So these kinds of changes calls for a need in values education, according to your author. So let's get into the changes in education system and how this can call for a need in values education. Remember, education is defined as a deliberate attempt to change an individual's behaviors, okay? And one function of education, therefore, is transmitting the definition of good to the new generations. We talked about this in character education weeks. And values education then should aim at cultivating the students as good citizens. Now, in our contemporary world, we're living in democratic societies mostly, and democratic societies demand responsible, critical thinkers and socially involved citizens. They are responsible because they know that their actions will have consequences both for themselves and the society, and they are expected to be socially involved so that there may be a mechanism of checks and balances between the state and the citizens. So we need good citizens, and these good citizens are expected to participate in the democratic society, and they should be good citizens in such a way that they have a sense of solidarity, dayanışma, as we are experiencing right at this moment as the pandemic is surrounding us. So values education then is important. It should aim at cultivating such good citizens who do good things both for themselves and for their fellow citizens and for their nation. And values education should aim at also to cultivate students as good citizens who are in harmony with the physical and social environment. And it also should aim at developing sensitivity for choosing among actions in or reactions to the society by the individual. There will always be conflicts between the individuals and between the individual and the group or the groups or the society. So what is the right thing to do when there is a conflict? When we are exposed to people who are not living like us, who do not think like us, who do not believe like us, and perhaps who do not like us, okay? How should we react? If somebody doesn't like me, Should I kill this person? Or should I find a way to live with this person? If I am an atheist and somebody is a religious person, a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew, or perhaps a Buddhist, whatever, what should we do in the societal life, in the daily life to live together? What are the correct reactions? What are the right reactions to express? What are the actions to take so that we can perhaps defend our values? Just imagine our society's examples on this. We always talk about polarization in the political domain in Turkey, right? Everybody complains about it. So what is the right thing to do then? So therefore, values education should teach or should provide the means for students to become good students who can live in harmony with the physical and the social environment, and who have a sensitivity for choosing the right thing to do when there are conflicts in expressing values. So perhaps tolerance is a very important value. Democracy is a very important personal value, so that such kind of students can live peacefully together. And need for values education can have two sources. There might be macro reasons for values education. When we say macro reasons, we refer to political, societal, and economical institutions. And there might be micro reasons when we have the educational perspective, such as pedagogical reasons concerning the management of educational programs. So, what is the political zeitgeist? What is the shape of the society in this contemporary world? What are the economical conditions surrounding the society and the politics around it? And in this macro context, what should the educators, teachers, or perhaps the Ministry of National Education do to have a good values education program? And what is a good values education program? And what is the content of a good values education program? Now, these are micro reasons to have good citizens. To have some detail on macro reasons, let's focus on socio-political and economical change in the world. What is the socio-political and economical change in the world? Most of you do not remember the state, so-called state, Soviet Socialist Cumhuriyetler Birliği. You don't have any idea about this state, okay? So in 1990, the Russian Federation has become Russian Federation, but before that, between 1950, with signing the Berlin Pact in 1950, United States and Russia did sign the Berlin Pact, Berlin Anlaşması, and the world has become politically involved in two poles. One is the West, one is the East. The West is characterized militarily characterized in NATO Pact, okay, whereas the East was characterized in the Warsaw Pact, okay. The Warsaw Pact contained the states, Russia, the Russians, okay, the Russia, and some states in Czechoslovakia, which does not exist today, okay. And the Germany was split as East Germany and West Germany, and West Germany was part of the NATO Pact, and East Germany was the part of the Warsaw Pact. So this was the world, two poles trying to influence each other with different political and economical structures. West claimed labor marketing, the labor market, liberal economy, whereas the East adopted the socialist economy. The West was governed by democracy or republics, whereas the East was governed by communist regimes and so on. So that was the world. And this shape of the world has changed by 1990, okay? And then market economy and liberal economy has entered all post-Soviet states. So it was an opportunity for the labor market to sell all the production they had in the West to the East, okay? So there would be more flow of money and so on. So sociopolitical and economical change in the world increased the need for education. We need people to be part, they said, actually, that's not my point of view, but that's the economical system saying, okay, we need individuals well educated so that they can produce better. If they produce better in the system, we can sell better goods so we can make more money. That's the basic idea. So market economy demanded a workforce equipped with knowledge and skills and character traits best fit for sustaining the economic growth. What is the character trait, or what is the type of character which is necessary for economic growth? We have talked about this in this course. It's the performance character. Okay, someone who is hardworking, industrious, someone who is responsible, disciplined, someone who has self-control, someone who is ambitious, someone who wants to be successful, who wants dominance, who wants power of money, and so on. That's performance character, as you would remember. So where has the moral character gone? So the economical change, coupled with the political change all around the world, changed the type of individual in all the societies as a more performance character, as having a more performance character, but perhaps disregarding the moral character. So to put it in values words or terms, this made person-focused values more important than social-focused values. So typical person-focused values such as competence might become more important than solidarity. Just imagine this in your mind as the contemporary students, or as members of the millennial generation, okay? So what is competence? Competence means that you get get involved in having a competition with other people so that you become the first, you become the best, okay? That's called competence. And that's called competition. That's a wrong word. I'm talking about competition, okay? So if you are to compete with other people so that you become the best, so that when you become the best, you get the best job. If you get the best job, you get the best money. Okay, that's the logic. Where has the solidarity gone then? Solidarity, dayanışma. Won't you help your fellow students or your friends? Will you not lend your lecture notes to your friends and so on? So this is a clash, okay? So person-focused values became more important than social-focused values in each and every society, not only in Turkey. In a sense, the labor market demanded people with performance character and did not care about moral character. So such a change requires teaching new generations the values which help the protection of social fabric. If everybody gets into tough competition, this might disrupt the relationships in the society, in the social context. Okay, that's a problem. So we should have a values education program in which values are taught to new generations, so that by knowing these important moral values, as you all know what they are, the social fabric, the peace in the society could be protected, and new generations should learn the values which make societal continuity possible and maintain and protect the norms of the society. So we always talk about personality for individuals, right? So personality of an individual is defined by traits, character traits, attributes of this individual. Hardworking, outgoing, talkative, shy, and so on and so forth, okay? Societies have their characters or personalities as well. And these characters or personalities of the societies make them different from other societies, and these differences are marked by the norms, the traditions, and the values which are important or cherished by the society. So when the world has become one market, the type of the human being, the individual, has become uniform, okay? So societies started to perhaps lose their personalities, their emic aspects, their norms or traditions, which make them different throughout the history. So this calls for values education. Also, values education institutions are necessary, are also necessary to have social control not over people, but to have a control over social relations or social flow, so that the future of the society is established in a desirable way. Okay, this means the survival of the nation. And values education in institutions are necessary to make individuals part of the society by very early age. Okay, so we should start cultivating the new members of the society at very early age, so that they can internalize all these important moral character traits or moral values or moral behaviors, and by internalizing them in the early age, so perhaps they choose to become adults as such adults in their future. And values education in institutions is necessary to transmit societal values in the educational process. When I say societal values, I mean the values which are important for the specific society or nation. Okay, this may change from one society to the other. And why do we need to transmit societal values in the educational process? In order that we can increase in social, so that the increase in social violence can be prevented. For instance, all around the world, crime rates are increasing, social violence is increasing, terror, aggression, wars, and so on. And we should find a solution to this problem, because it is a threat to the economic growth, and it's a threat to human life. And it might become, because of the nuclear powers, it might become a threat to the humanity, to the human civilization and the world. And we should transmit society values in the educational process, so that moral decay in each and every society can be stopped. What do I mean by moral decay? Just as few examples, think about bribery, rüşvet, corruption, yolsuzluk, sexual offenses. Okay, these are some simple examples. These are some examples to moral decay. We think, or the social scientists believe, that if people, or the educational scientists believe that if people could successfully internalize moral values, then partly these problems can be overcome. And we should transmit society values in the educational process, so that work discipline, interpersonal courtesy, cleanliness and hygiene, or some other moral values can be internalized by the children and students. Now, just think about the current situation that we're experiencing in the pandemic. Okay, hygiene has become the most important issue in our lives. Okay, if we can make students learn the importance of cleanliness and hygiene, just imagine how many lives we can save in the following perhaps 10 or 20 years. Okay, so values education is necessary. Then the pedagogical question becomes, which values should be taught or should be chosen to be taught? Now, I ask you again to read the 6th chapter in your textbook, okay, written by Sareyan Yolcu, İlköğretim ve Ortaöğretim Programlarında Değerler. You will find there all the values preferred or chosen by the Turkish administration. This is the policy of the National Education Ministry. Okay, I'm just going to read you one part of it. Okay, what values are thought to be important in the primary education, for instance. Okay, there are some core values. Let me read them for you. Okay, justice, friendship, honesty, self-control, patience, respect, love, responsibility, patriotism, helpfulness. Okay, these are very important values, and as you can appreciate, these are the values as we categorize as mostly categorized as moral values, referring to the moral character, and self-control, discipline, and so on. These are more about performance character. So I recommend that you read the textbook, so you read this chapter thoroughly, so that you can have a list of values which are believed to be important in the Turkish educational system so that the next generation can be cultivated as a moral character. And also, it is also important to assess the effectiveness of the educational settings. That's a big problem. If we are implementing a program, an educational program, a new curriculum, for instance, we should test whether it works well. So always keep this in mind in future, that when you develop a values education program, you have to test whether it's effective or not. So one part of change is the change in education, in the nature of education and the need for education. Now let's come to the change in culture. Why do we need values education? Because the culture is changing according to the author. So first of all, what's culture? Let's have a definition. This definition is provided by Triandis. Triandis is a cross-cultural psychologist who studied culture and psychological processes for long years. I like this definition very much. Let me go first through this definition. Culture is a set of human-made objective and subjective elements that in the past have increased the probability of survival and resulted in satisfactions for the participants in an ecological niche, and thus become shared among those who could communicate with each other because they had a common language and they lived in the same time and place. Now, this is a good definition of culture. Actually, culture is the production of human beings, all the productions. Here, the culture is a set of human-made objective and subjective elements is used as starting point. So what is an objective element? Human-made objective element. We invent computers, we produce computers, spaceships, board markers. Even we have softwares and programs, and we use these softwares and programs so that we can keep on we can maintain the educational process in the pandemic. Okay, these are the productions of human mind. They are human-made objective elements. When we say objective, they can be touched and seen and tasted and so on. So there are concrete examples of human production, like pottery in the past, like arrows, like guns, like ships, and so on. A subjective element, on the other hand, is subjective because it's not directly observed and it's personal, it's private. Norms, roles, and values, for instance, are subjective elements of culture. So all these objective and subjective elements are the products of our culture. And as you see, culture is defined partly by values, okay? Which values is group of people have living in a common place in, let's say, at the same time, or the time period in history, are said to have a culture. So why are these products important? Because these products increase the probability of survival, okay? So culture is an invention of a large group of people so that they all can survive together. Once they survive, this is reinforced, resulted in satisfactions, means the productions of the culture is reinforced for the participants in a certain physical environment, and then become shared. If somebody is, if some idea, if some behavior or patterns of behaviors are reinforced, they become stronger. And when they become stronger, and if they become shared among a set of people who can communicate with each other because of a common language, because of they live in the same time and place, then it becomes widely shared and it becomes a national culture. So that's a very good definition, I believe, of culture. So hospitality, for instance, misafirperverlik, is such kind of a subjective element, a value of Turkish society, which increase the probability of survival. If you're living in relatively poor conditions, if everybody is hospitable to everybody, then whatever you have can be shared with another person, so everybody would survive. Okay, that's the basic idea. And according to Triandis, culture is the product of ecology. So first comes, according to Triandis, first comes the physical environment. The physical environment shapes human beings in the historical period in such a way that a culture emerges. And this culture has certain traditions and customs or roles or patterns of behaving and thinking. And then a less macro level process takes place, which is defined by the culture, which we call socialization. Socialization means bringing up the children, okay, teaching the new members of the society to its subjective elements, okay, the culture, partly. Then socialization shapes the personality of the person, and personality causes the behavior. So this is a cultural theory of behavior, as you can observe. And this path, ecology leads to culture, leads to socialization, leads to personality, leads to behavior, is proposed by Triandis. But I put here character as an equivalent of personality. In the socialization process, we acquire our characters, which means in the socialization process, in our families, in the educational system, we learn values, virtues, morality-related thinking and behaving, which results in our behaviors. So a change in culture would change the definition of the character, as you can observe here. A change in culture changes how families and parents bring up their children. When they change their styles of parenting, personalities of the individuals will change. When the personalities of the individuals will change, the behaviors of them will also change. So in the past, we had authoritarian fathers, for instance, in Turkey. But as the culture changed because of the economical reasons, now, or sociopolitical reasons, now we have more indulgent parents, indulgent fathers, okay? When we have indulgent fathers, there is less control over the behavior. When there is less control over the behavior, more hedonistic behaviors are chosen. It's not shaped, okay? Less self-discipline is observed, perhaps. Now, that calls for a character and values education because our society has changed. So, in order to understand what has changed and what has not, we should have a theoretical framework in defining the cultures or the differences among cultures. One mostly preferred dimension is individualism, collectivism dimension in cross-cultural psychology or cultural psychology. Individualism is defined by the tasks or the behaviors or the ways of thinking and feeling in a given society as compared to collectivism, just the opposites. So individualism is characterized by priority on personal goals. Self is defined as an independent entity, and changing the situation to fit the self is important. So that's mastery. If I don't like this environment, I can change it. I don't fit it. There is a focus on the needs of the individual, not of the others or the society. Cognitions are context dependent. People come to think about more specifically, it means, okay? So we have ideas or thoughts or decisions regarding the immediate context. We do not generalize our thoughts or decisions to all other contexts, for instance, if we are living in individualistic societies. Behaviors differ slightly towards in and out group members. Remember, in-group members are more favoring in their thoughts and behaviors to their fellow in-group members, but they are kind of less favoring to out-group members. But in individualistic societies, in-group, out-group members are behaved by the individual not that much differently. And emotions are self-focused, okay? The person is the focus, so the emotions are experienced about the self mostly, such as anger or pride as a positive emotion, okay? It's not necessarily negative. Anger is just an example, but pride also. In collectivism, the priority is on in-group goals, not my success, but the collective success, my family's success, for instance, okay? Self is defined in terms of interpersonal relationships or roles rather than independent traits which discriminate the person from the other people. Changing the self to fit the situation is important. That's being in harmony with nature, being in harmony with the groups in the society in general. But that's not the case in the West. So collectivism characterizes the East most of the time. Focus on the needs of the in-group is important, and cognitions are context dependent, okay? And behaviors differ a lot towards in and out group members. In-group members are favored more, and emotions are other-focused rather than self-focused. So empathy is an other-focused emotion, okay? Hate is an other-focused emotion, perhaps. So these are the major differences between individualism and collectivism. So this is just one dimension to define a society. So a culture can be, a culture can be an individualistic or a collectivistic culture, or it can be mixed. So, but this is only one dimension. There are other dimensions. These dimensions are proposed and studied by Hofstede in the last 30 years. Power distance, for instance, according to Hofstede, is one of the important dimensions which discriminate across cultures, across societies. What is power distance? It is the tendency to see a large distance between upper and lower parts of the social structure, okay? Which means there are cultures which emphasize a differential between groups in the society, and there are cultures which do not emphasize, which emphasize equality between the groups in the society. And the extent of which less powerful members of the society expect and accept unequal distribution of power. So it's about distribution of resources, it's about distribution of authority, and so on. So status symbols are important in high power distant societies. Okay, status symbols. So status symbols are, if you are a police person, you have your uniform, that's a status symbol, and people may feel proud because of having this uniform and so on. That's power distance. And a person who is not a police person, for instance, can a little bit be hesitant in interacting with this person, can be a little bit scared with interacting with this person because he believes he has the authority over him and the other people. Whereas status symbols are not that important. So in Turkey, for instance, most of the time you observe that on the books, on scientific books, people write Professor Dr. XYZ, okay? In the Western societies, mostly, you wouldn't observe Professor Doctor. You would only observe the name. So the academic title is a status symbol, which is important, showing us that, at least in Turkish academia, power distance is large, okay? People in roles with differential statuses are unequals in power distant societies. Children are not old age security of parents, okay? Teachers are responsible from high quality learning. So teachers are responsible from high quality learning in power distant societies. So there is the Mahmut Hoca and ona tabi olanlar. That's it. Somebody teaches, the other learns. The student is passive because there's a power distance. And there is more one-way communication, perhaps, in these kind of societies. Just the opposite is true for low power distance societies. Status symbols are not important. People in roles with differential statuses are equals. Children are not old age security of parents. Both teachers and students are responsible from high quality learning, so there is two-way communication. So could you make it in your mind that power distance is about accepting or expecting status difference between people with different social identities? And now the third dimension. So the first dimension is individualism, collectivism. The second one is the power distance. The third one proposed by Hofstede is uncertainty avoidance. So it's the tendency to dislike and avoid uncertain situations. Some societies dislike uncertainty. Some societies can live with it. The extent of which members of a culture feel threatened by ambiguous and unknown situations is called uncertainty avoidance. So If a society is high in uncertainty avoidance, it means that most members of the society do not like to experience a threat by ambiguity. Okay, so high uncertainty avoidance means people feel less happy, they're more tense, more anxious, more worries about health and money are observed. Teachers are supposed to have all knowledge. Okay, if you don't like uncertainty, I should be responsible for making it extremely certain. Okay, and conservative investments are made. Conservative investment, put your money to gold, it will never lose. Okay, but don't get in the stock market, it's a risk. So safety and security is more important in jobs, as we all know, and less ethnic and religious tolerance is observed in such societies because it's a big source of ambiguity. Let's say I am a Christian and somebody is another person is a Muslim. Living in an uncertainty avoidant nation or culture means that if I am true, he should be wrong. If he is wrong, then I should be. If he is true, then I should be wrong. How can I deal with this uncertainty? Okay, so I am less tolerant to different ideas. In uncertainty avoidance cultures, just the opposite is true. For low uncertainty avoidance cultures, people feel happier, fewer worries about health and money. And teacher, for instance, may say, I do not know. Okay, that's a big difference because it's not a big problem, both for the status of this person, and it's not a big problem for the students because if the teacher doesn't know, then the students can learn it. There are more risky investments such as having stock market investments. Safety and security is less important in jobs because people believe that somehow they can find another job. And less ethnic and religious tolerance is also observed. This should be more ethnic and religious tolerance, okay, is observed in low uncertainty avoidant societies. And finally, I'll have 5 more minutes, then we will have a break. And finally, the fourth dimension proposed by Hofstede is masculinity and femininity. That's a value-laden, as you all know, that's a value-laden labeling, but that's the theory. We do not prefer to use masculinity and femininity. It's a problem because a culture cannot be masculine. A culture is not a man, nor it's a woman, okay? So that's a problem, a criticism about the labeling in the theory. But what is masculinity and femininity? It's the tendency of the male and female members of the culture to accept traditionally relevant masculine and feminine values, personality characteristics, and activities, respectively. So, are the people in this society living with the traditional man and woman definitions as they assume them? Okay. So, in masculine societies, emotional gender roles are distinct. So, women can cry, men can't. Women can express emotions, but men can't, and so on. Fathers deal with facts, mother with emotions. So there is a division of labor. Women should be chaste. Aggression by children is tolerated. Job choice is based on career opportunities, and less working women are in the workforce in masculine societies. These are some findings, okay? Look at this. Aggression by children is tolerated. If a society is masculine, we have a problem. Okay, if a society is why do we have a problem? Because if aggression is taught by the very socializing agents like parents, how can we overcome violence when they get in school, when they become adults? Okay, so let's say if the society is a high power distance society, how can we, if everybody is accepting, let's say, the differences among groups, the status differences, and everybody respects the authority more than it should be respected. How can we develop tolerance, and how can we establish peace among different groups? Keep them in mind, okay? And in feminine societies or cultures, emotional gender roles partly overlap. Both fathers and mothers deal with facts and emotions. Both men and women should be chaste. Aggression by children is not tolerated. Job choice is based on intrinsic interest, not career opportunities. That's a very big difference. More working women are in the workforce. So what's the case of Turkey? The last word. What is the case of Turkey according to Hofstede's dimensions? Turkey, when compared to other cultures in this cross-cultural study, is in the top 56th percentile in individualism, collectivism dimension. So if there are 100 countries in this research, Turkey is the 56th country, which means Turkey is close to collectivism. For instance, China and Pakistan are typical collectivistic societies, whereas USA and United Kingdom are typical individualistic societies. So Turkey is such a society that it has both tendencies, okay? In the past, Turkey was more collectivistic, but now it's becoming more and more individualistic, but still it's a mixed society. As for power distance, Turkey is in the top 44th percentile. 100 countries, 44th, meaning closer to high power distance. So the power differential among the members of different groups is accepted in Turkey, mostly. It's changing so far, I believe. Typical high power distance societies are Malaysia and Russia. Low power distance societies are Sweden and Finland. As for uncertainty avoidance, Turkey ranks top 32nd percentile, the highest as you can observe now, okay? Meaning 100 countries, 32nd. So we do not like uncertainty in Turkey. We are high uncertainty avoidant culture. So Greece and Portugal are the highest. USA and United Kingdom are the lowest uncertainty avoidant countries. Finally, as for masculinity, femininity, top 59th percentile characterizes Turkey. We are closer to femininity. This doesn't mean that all the members of the society are living like women. Okay, that's not the thing. That's why it's a problematic labeling for the dimension. But it means that Turkish people, remember that Turkish people also are more likely to be androgynous. We, as Turkish men and Turkish women, are more likely to express emotions and do things that women are expected to do traditionally, and define ourselves with more expressive terms, with more social traits, which is the very fabric of our society. So that's the case of Turkey. Now let's stop here for a while. Okay, we have a break, and then we will go on with the changes taking place in the Turkey. Okay, let's stop here for a while. Okay, welcome again. So we were talking about the the changing culture and how it might influence a need for values education. And so we talked about the cultural dimensions by Hofstede, and we observed that Turkey is more like a collectivistic society, but it's mixed, uncertainty avoidant, high power distant, and somewhat feminine society, according to Hofstede's classification. So what does that mean? People value power. Power means authority and dominance. Authority and dominance means that equality is not that important. Then we have a problem with this, because equality is important in regulating the behaviors of individuals from different groups, and also regulating the interactions of groups in Turkish society. So universalism values need to be educated in the value education programs in Turkey, so that we have more peaceful generations in the future, for instance. And uncertainty avoidance is important, so we should teach our children to be more tolerant to uncertainty. This requires that they have self-respect, they have self-confidence, and so on, as important values. And but we have a strength. We have both individualistic and collectivistic tendencies, so social relationships are important. So it will be easier, and we are a culture. We are living in a culture where expression of emotions are easier than most other countries around the world. So we have strengths also, and we should use these strengths to develop better moral characters in our students in Turkey. So the cultural dimensions provided or proposed by Hofstede is just one theoretical point of view. Another point of view is, or another theory is proposed by Schwartz. We previously learned about individual level value theory of Schwartz, the circumplex structure, you remember. But today, I'll also talk about his culture level theory. Schwartz discriminates or differentiates world cultures with respect to the values they emphasize over other values. So, according to Schwartz, it is basically the value priorities of societies which make them different from one another. But he proposes a different terminology because he doesn't want to use individual level theory for the cultural level theory because they are not comparable. This is like saying that horses are thinking that we don't like them, okay? Or we don't know whether horses can think like humans or not. So we cannot use individual level theory for understanding cultures. So he proposed, but the basics are the same. There are value types. So here you will observe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, okay, value types, okay? And these value types are located around the circumplex because they represent different motivations. But this time, these motivations are the emphases of culture, okay? What is important for the culture? And now let's go through them. So one type, value type, is embeddedness. It's also called conservatism in the past versions, but he prefers embeddedness now. The culture asks a question: how should things go in this domain, okay? What should we do? You can find this definition in my chapter as well, in Turkish. Okay, what is the emphasis of the culture on, okay? It is the emphasis on the maintenance of status quo, propriety, and restraint of actions or inclinations that might disrupt the solidarity of the group or the traditional order? Or is the emphasis on the desirability of individuals independently pursuing affective positive experience, or the desirability of individuals independently pursuing their own ideas and intellectual directions? So a culture, according to Schwartz, can want to protect the tradition, or it can let individuals feel and think independently. Okay. That's a conflict, as you could appreciate, okay? So embeddedness versus affective autonomy and intellectual autonomy is one conflict in this theory. So a culture or cultures can be differentiated with respect to the emphasis they put on the legitimacy of an unequal distribution of power, roles, and resources versus transcendence of selfish interests in favor of voluntary commitment to promoting the welfare of others. So will the resources be kept in one group, high status group, and the other groups will accept this, or will the resources of the society be equally distributed among the groups in the society and the members of these different groups? So this defines a hierarchy versus egalitarianism conflict, okay? And finally, a culture might put emphasis on getting ahead through active self-assertion versus fitting harmoniously in the environment. So this defines the mastery versus harmony conflict. So let's see the structure of these culture level value types first by Schwartz. As you observe here, it's another circumplex. The same values are used this time to define cultures, but the value types which differentiate the cultures or which discriminate the cultures are different, and there are 7 value types. Harmony versus mastery, hierarchy versus intellectual and affective autonomy, and egalitarianism versus hierarchy, okay? These are in conflict. So depending on which value types are more important and which ones are less important, different cultures will be located in different groups around the world. Now look at this map, okay? This is a summary of all world cultures from 7 continents. And in a study with people from different countries, Schwartz figured that world cultures can be divided into different groups in terms of the values they emphasize, the value types they emphasize in their own cultures. So Western Europe or West End Europe, for instance, is characterized by egalitarianism and intellectual autonomy, okay, including United States, United Kingdom, and most West European countries. But the East, the Muslim Middle East, Southeast Asia, and South Asia, as you observe, are characterized by embeddedness or conservatism and hierarchy, okay? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different geographical regions on the earth which are characterized by their somewhat ethnic, geographical, and religious differences among each other. But all these differences are reflected in the values they prefer. So what is the case of Turkey in this map? Look at this red area here. It's the location of Turkey. Turkey is kind of at the very middle of all cultures, okay? So, for instance, as you observe here, let's find an example. Okay, where is the United States? It's typical individualistic. Okay, here you see United States is characterized mostly by mastery and affective authority. Affective autonomy, very close to this point. But look at, for instance, being very conservative society, Senegal, Cameroon, Yemen, Ethiopia, Egypt. Okay, these are very traditional societies, and you might be a little bit perhaps puzzled with this because we all think that we are a very traditional society, but we are not that much traditional as compared to other societies because we have some individualistic tendencies. Keep this in mind. So we are closer to the United States as we are farther away from many Muslim Arabic countries, as you see, Malaysia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Fiji, Philippines, and so on and so forth, okay? But we are very close to Balkan region countries in terms of our value priorities. You see Brazil, Serbia, Romania, Russia, Bulgaria, Macedonia, okay? This is the Balkan heritage of the Ottoman Empire, which makes perhaps us quite a bit similar to these countries, and so on. So that's the place of Turkey in this map. So what's the characterization of Turkish culture in terms of Schwartz's theory? The most important value type is egalitarianism. Then comes embeddedness, conservatism, which is equal to harmony. Okay. Then comes mastery. Then comes autonomy, affective and intellectual autonomy. So affective and intellectual autonomy is not very much important in this society. That's a big problem. Affective autonomy, you can freely express your emotions, but you can also control your emotions. That's a big problem. And intellectual autonomy means that you can think and behave and create independently as an individual. You can express yourself freely without hesitance. That's a problem in this society. We all know this, okay? And when you look at this picture, yes, we have certain strengths like egalitarianism being important, conservatism being important, harmony being important. It means that in the educational process, it's easier for us as teachers to teach our new generations the moral character, but performance character, teaching a good performance character is a little bit problematic perhaps, okay? So why is this the case? What is the explanation by Schwartz for the case of Turkey? The case of Turkey is this, okay? Why is Turkey here? Why is not with other Muslim countries? Why is not with other Middle East countries, okay? It's somewhere in between the West and the traditional societies. So according to Schwartz, Turkey is higher on egalitarianism and autonomy and lower on hierarchy and embeddedness than its Middle Eastern Muslim neighbors are, which means we are not a typical Middle East Muslim country. We have our Muslim heritage, we have our Middle Eastern heritage, but we are closer to the West than we are closer to the East in terms of value priorities. This probably reflects its secular democracy, historical engagement with East Europe, which is the Balkans, and recent struggles to join the West, which is our attempts and struggle for becoming a European Union member. So this paragraph is taken from Schwartz chapter in 2014. Okay, there has been 6 years past, and we are experiencing the pandemic now. And following the first decade after pandemic, how all the societies around the world will change, we do not know. But in this pandemic, we are observing that our egalitarian, eşitlikçi, our conservative, embedded, our harmonious culture helped us to survive it perfectly well. But now it's time for us to develop ourselves to become more disciplined, responsible, serious individuals who will also have a good performance character so that this moral character can intertwine with it to produce the best possible product for the society, which is the future generation of the Turkish nation. And values education is important in this all cultural changes taking place in the last 40 or 50 years perhaps. And now, after the pandemic, I believe we will have new struggles. So Turkish culture, therefore, to summarize it, Turkish culture has undergone a cultural change by 1980s after the coup d'etat, 80 darbesi. It has become more individualistic, yet it conserved the collectivistic tendencies. Highly educated upper segment people in Turkey are more individualistic, but still, although we become higher SES people, we become more educated people, we still maintain our collectivistic tendencies, especially with close others and with our families. We're still emotionally dependent on our families. Thus, there is a generation gap to a certain extent between the parents of older generations and the students and millennials. So you are the millennials, I am the parent, meaning we have a gap. And this gap makes me feel, for instance, that things are going worse. And even my father is saying the same thing for me, okay? And your father is perhaps saying the same thing for you. So we have a problem with transmitting some important values from all generations to the new generation because of all this economical, political, cultural zeitgeist, okay? And the old generations are experiencing as if we are losing the country, as if we will not survive if the youth will go this way. They are focusing on actually on moral character, whereas the millennials are focusing on the performance character. But there should be a way to intertwine them. Okay, that's why we need a values education, perhaps. And this generation gap is manifest in more emphasis on Beni duyuyor musunuz?